Welcome back to our lecture on reviving the Eschaton. So what we're dealing with is a situation where we're talking about a subject that is extremely complex and rather all-encompassing. That makes it intimidating, and the fact that we have to talk about it on camera is compounds our problems, but we can get through this. And what we want to talk about is the death of eschatology, and as I've perceived it. When McKenna died, and then December 21st, 2012 came around, and there was no magnificent moment, nothing happened that anybody can say happened on a anything other than a personal level or perspective. I mean, many people, myself included, had enlightening revelations during this time, but those were more personal, and but again, those need to be brought to light in order to be something that was a physical change, because any change in you that is able to get projected out onto the world changes the world also. And this subject of a transcendental object at the end of time, which I would like to start calling tau tiat, which is just the first letter of each word slammed together, tau tiat, and transcendental object at, that's the tau, and then the end of time, tiat. So the tau tiat, which is this eschatological object, was in some sense falsely declared dead. That's right. Nothing seems to happen, regardless of, or just keep that in the back of your mind, that individual things that may have happened to you during this awakening time have to be brought out into the world. But just for most starting points in the conversation, scientists are trying to bury eschatology, basically, and we just can't let them get away with it. And so what I have started out down the path of is defending a long-term goal for and a revamping of definitions of what eschatology means, and or not really what it means, but like the amount of time that it's going to take to get there. So traditionally, neo-traditionally, people have like McKenna, like Ray Kurzweil, who this slide is from. Again, I believe I referenced at the beginning of video 1 that the prereqs for this talk were my video on Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, and my video about it, Singularity is Not Near. And so, but we need to revive the Eschaton, and we do that in front of everybody by suggesting that, contrary to what McKenna held, which was that things were growing exponentially, if nature is only semi-fractal-like, not a true fractal, not a continuous fractal along all scales, but only has some fractal nature, then it would be possible to see and And then once we have a definition of what a key event is, and it's not that hard. I mean, like, it's something that is invented by someone or multiple people that helps society. And what constitutes helping society is things that make society, that make our lives better, but it doesn't need to be too finely grained. Like, it needs to be what helps society, or what helps us grow. It needs to be like, you have one main thing of what you're talking about, and then that'll be a subset of the graph. It'll be like a form of key events. So instead of like trying to, because you could do that, you could just try to like put but no, see, like if you just put all events on there, but even then if they were speeding up, because like more events happen in an area that has decreasing entropy, and like, even if you just didn't give a definition, you're like, of key events, and you were just like, okay, we're going to put all events on a timeline and see if they're getting closer and closer together. But if they don't always get closer together, then what happens is that you have an S-curve in development. You have an inflection point, and as soon as you hit the halfway point, basically, it starts tapering off. And what I propose, essentially, is to map development with, again, various types of development. So you could do one with communication, the forms of communication, including the grunts and signs, to speech, early speech, to complex speech, to, written, to code, encoded messages. You get into encryption fairly early on, several thousand years ago. They were already encrypting information. And then you get the phone and cell phones, and so, but what you begin to see when you break it down like that is that you're very quickly coming up with new ways to communicate, but that at a certain point you're hitting a ceiling, a constraint. In this case, the potential number of ways that you can communicate. Just consider, and we're talking about modes, we're not talking about things that you can say, like, that's obviously infinite, but like just the, sign language, body language, which is very closely related to sign language, spoken, written, encrypted written, which is arguably that's a complexification of just written language, is to encrypt it. That is the cognitive extension of camouflage in nature. And but to see that things in a particular case don't seem like there would be an infinite number of ways, an infinite number of progressions to be made, it gives you a way to like not parse, but partition like the various components of maximum development, so that you can see one at a time that, okay, well, we're actually talking about a finite process. And that's really what I'm getting at. Like, the approach to, we're reviving the Eschaton, clear, boom, and it's alive, and it is a finite, approachable process that is extended along a two-dimensional timeline in a multiverse along a sea of chaos. And That's my general framework that I am working with, and that I will continually struggle with understanding myself, as well as struggle with illuminating this very broad and deep concept to you, to the public. And again, the takeaway here is that, so you look at the curvature of development, y equals 1, that's maximal development, and then you have the rate curve, which hits its max at x equals 0, y equals 1/2. We predict that if you actually plot curves, we gave one example, modes of transportation, where it would be okay, I suppose, to allow for a difference between a car and a truck and a four-door, and then an electric car and the diesel came before the, so that at each, and that's basically allowing for improvements to constitute the next form, an improvement upon a previous form of transportation will be a data point along the curve. And again, we use the path rule between discrete points to determine whether things will continue to speed up or not, developmentally speaking. If we'll be able to track it and see it. And if Terence McKenna was right, then the curve will maybe bounce a little bit up, but it's going to mainly be a curve going down. Actually, I think from your perspective, it would be like this. So going down, maybe having some perturbations in it, but the general direction would have to be down, 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 events getting closer and closer together. But again, just think about, we thought about communication, now we're thinking of transportation, and my next step is actually going to be to plot some of these out. I think that's what I'm going to do. That is what I'm going to do, and we're going to attempt to see, because we're wanting to show that the modes of transportation sped up, but we're looking at or near a point in time for which the rate of production of the next improvement or genuinely new form of transportation are getting fewer and farther between. And this is something we can really do. And again, we are reviving Tautiot. My name is Watson Williams, and this reviving of the transcendental object at the end of time, which, as you can see here, is symbolized as an egg, is attainable on this curve if there's like a symmetry break in it, like we're moving towards a stopping point, where there's going to be a little difference and you have to jump the gap, basically. So there will be a transcendental moment, but it's not going to have to be, zooming off into infinity forever. It's just going to be bridging a gap before before maximal entropy takes over and everything just spreads out. There's a few timelines, I believe, where by willpower alone, not just a fully natural process, but one that we feed back into, we will be able to, at a disjointed point in the future, bridge that last little gap, but what was on essentially a logistic curvature and not exponential. But again, the logistic function is derived from the simple e to the x, f of x equals e to the x. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos.